Imagine waking up to the sound of pounding hammers on land you own. That's right, one morning, I walked out to what had always been my empty lot, only to see strangers driving fence posts into my soil like they ruled the place. And not just strangers, HOA contractors, acting like the neighborhood sheriff squad. If you've ever dealt with a power-hungry HOA, buckle up, because this is the story of how they tried to steal what was mine, and how I made them regret every nail they touched. It started simple. My land sat empty. Overgrown grass, a couple trees, nothing special. I bought it years ago as an investment, and while I lived nearby, I didn't visit often. But apparently, not around all the time turned into, hey, let's pretend we own his land. They planned to extend a community walking path, add a maintenance shed and fence it in, without asking me. The first sign something was wrong, a letter taped to a flimsy wooden stake on the property line. It read, Community enhancement scheduled. Unauthorized entry prohibited. I laughed at first, like, who exactly are they prohibiting from my land? But before I could even process it, the next day those contractors showed up. No warning, no permission, just boots, drills, and ego. I marched over. What are you doing on my property? I asked. The foreman shrugged, saying, HOA approved. He pointed toward the clubhouse like that was the Supreme Court. Then he added, if you have concerns, talk to them. We're just following orders. Orders on my land. I stormed into the HOA office and found their president, Linda, your classic HOA Karen with a clipboard, pastel sweater, and a smile frozen like stale icing. She looked at me like I was inconveniencing her. We assumed the lot was abandoned, she said, and as per community development guidelines, we decided to incorporate it to maintain uniformity. Uniformity, a word tyrants love. I told her plainly, that's my land. She blinked, unfazed. Do you have proof of ownership? She asked, like she was cross-examining me. That's when I knew this wouldn't be easy. They didn't think I'd fight. They thought silence meant surrender. Spoiler, they guessed wrong. So I went home that night, sat at my desk, and pulled out every document I had. Title deed? Check. Purchase agreement? Check. Tax receipts? Check. I wasn't just ready. I was loaded with paperwork like a legal gunslinger. I knew they thought they could bully me. But they picked the wrong property. They picked the wrong person. I returned to the lot the next morning ready for war. And there they were again, hammers swinging, posts going into the ground like my property was their backyard makeover project. I didn't yell, not yet. I simply pulled out the folder I'd prepared, thick with every document that proved this land was mine, and walked straight up to the crew leader. Stop. One word, calm, firm. He smirked like he'd seen angry homeowners before. Sir, we already explained, he said. HO authorized this. I opened the folder and handed him a copy of my deed. This authorizes me, I replied. His face shifted, not fear exactly, but confusion and discomfort. Like a kid caught coloring on the walls, he muttered something into his radio. And minutes later, guess who marched up the street? Linda. Clipboard. Sunglasses. Confidence leaking out of her like a deflated balloon. You again, she sighed, as if I was interrupting her property. We already discussed this. The board has voted. I smiled. And the county voted when they issued this. I held the deed in front of her like a trophy. This land is privately owned. By me. You trespassed twice. Her eyes narrowed. We acted in the community's interest. You can't just leave land unused forever. Yes, she said that, as if the Constitution was written by HOA board members. Unused land doesn't magically become yours, I replied. This is not some medieval village. You don't annex private property. She scoffed. You should have notified us you still owned it. I laughed, loud. I don't need to remind you what I own. She frowned deeper. The board believes this land falls under shared community improvement rights. Believes? I repeated. Belief isn't law. Then she crossed a line. If you resist, she said, we will pursue penalties for obstructing HOA development. Penalties for stopping them from stealing my lot. At that moment, something inside me clicked. No more warnings. No more polite explanations. Time to escalate. Okay, I said calmly. Then I'll pursue legal action for trespassing, property damage, attempted encroachment, and harassment. Her lips twitched. Legal threats won't intimidate us. I stepped closer. That wasn't a threat. It was a courtesy. I dialed a number on my phone and spoke loudly enough for the workers to hear. Hi, yes. I need to file a police report for trespassing and unauthorized construction on private land. Silence. Tools stopped. Everyone froze. Linda's expression finally cracked. Let's pause work until we clarify the paperwork, she whispered. Oh, now she cared about paperwork. Game on. The HOA paused their little invasion for exactly 24 hours. 24 hours of quiet, where no posts went in, no boards were hammered, No smug glares from Linda. But I knew it wasn't over. People like her don't back down. They regroup. So while they spent the night plotting their next power play, I spent mine preparing my own offensive. First thing in the morning, I contacted a property attorney. I showed him the deed, the HOA notice, photos of the fence posts, and a video of the contractors. He didn't blink. They overstepped, he said. And by a mile, we'll file a cease and desist and request damages. Music to my ears. When I pulled up to the lot later that day, the scene felt different. Trucks again. Workers again. This time with cement bags. They weren't just restarting. They were doubling down. The HOA wasn't backing off. They were betting I'd blink first. Spoiler, I don't blink. I walked straight onto the property. Stop right now, I said. The foreman shrugged. HOA said proceed. They said you don't own this. That's when I smiled. This wasn't incompetence. This was arrogance on display. Right then, a patrol car rolled up. Perfect timing. I had called earlier to confirm they'd respond if work resumed. The officer got out and approached. Who owns this land? He asked. I raised my hand and held up the original deed. I do. Then, because I came ready, I handed the officer a certified copy. He nodded and turned to the workers. Everyone stopped work immediately. Linda came marching from around the corner like she'd been waiting to swoop in. Officer, this is HOA-approved development, she insisted. This land is part of the community aesthetic plan. He asked her one simple question. Do you have ownership or legal right to alter this property? She froze. That tiny pause. Oh, it was beautiful. Then she tried a new angle. The land appeared abandoned. The officer deadpanned. Appearing abandoned doesn't transfer ownership. I almost applauded. Linda huffed. We believed. He cut her off. Belief isn't legal authority, ma'am. Step off his property. She opened her mouth again, but the officer's tone dropped. Now. She stepped back like someone had yanked her leash. The cement bags stayed closed. The hammers fell silent. The HOA power balloon deflated right there on my grass. But they weren't finished. No, they were furious. And furious people make desperate moves. And desperate HOA boards, they get sloppy. Very sloppy. The HOA thought the police stepping in would scare me into backing off. Instead, it just poured gasoline on their panic. And when petty people panic, they don't apologize. They scheme. The very next day, I received an official-looking envelope from the HOA. Fancy letterhead. Bold text, legal-style tone. It read, Notice of Community Acquisition and Compliance Order. Translation. They believed that if they declared they owned my land, reality would comply. According to them, since the property was unused and unmaintained, the HOA board had absorbed it for community benefit, and I must vacate all claims immediately. Absorbed. Like my land was a spilled soda and they were paper towels. I almost framed that letter, but instead I forwarded it to my attorney. His response? A single sentence. They just handed us the case gift-wrapped. We filed a formal legal notice, adding charges for attempted property seizure, fraudulent claim of ownership, trespassing and structural damage, harassment, and fees, lots of fees. Within 48 hours, the HOA received a cease and desist with a very clear warning. Continue. And we sue. And not small claims court, civil property litigation. Real money. Real consequences. 2 days later, an emergency HOA meeting was announced. I attended. Front row, calm, confident Linda sat at the head table looking like she'd swallowed a cactus. The board whispered. Papers shuffled. Finally, she forced out a smile that looked physically painful. After further review, she said through clenched teeth, the board has determined the land does not fall under HOA jurisdiction. Translation. They lost. But then I stood up. Before we move on, I said, I want this on record. I placed the deed on the table. Not a copy. The original. Official seal. My name bold as daylight. It hit that wood like a gavel. Gasps. Silence. I continued. This land has always been mine. You built on it without permission. You tried to seize it. That ends today. Someone on the board whispered. He brought the deed. Another sighed like his retirement savings had just evaporated. Linda couldn't speak. She just stared, shaking slightly. The fence posts? Removed by the end of that week. The HOA? Forced to issue a written apology and cover legal fees. My attorney even suggested putting up a sign for clarity. So I did. It reads, private property, not HOA land. And under it, in small print, deed available upon request. Every time I walk by, I smile. Because some battles aren't won by shouting. They're won by proving you own the ground you stand on. If you enjoyed this story and love seeing HOAs get what they deserve, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more crazy real-life tales. Your support helps us keep exposing these HOA power trips, so hit that bell too. You won't want to miss the next one.